And now it's my privilege to introduce Kara Lolley, who is the Executive Director of Canyon Blooms for Patients. This is an organization here in Yakima that began in 2020 during the lockdown. And we so look forward to her sharing her message of how flowers are a tool for spiritual growth and living.
Thank you. Oh my, that's loud. I haven't done this before, so be patient with me. I'm dying to tell you all about, I'm very much looking forward to telling you about our nonprofit. But I want to start by reading something that I just saw. Many of you have probably read this. This is Eckhart Tolle's work. But he said, flowers provide inspiration to countless artists, poets, and mystics. Jesus tells us to contemplate the flowers and learn from them how to live. The Buddha is said to have given a silent sermon once, during which he held up a flower and gazed at it. After a while, one of those present, a monk called Mahayakapa, began to smile. He is said to have been the only one who had understood the sermon. According to legend, that smile, that is to say realization, was handed down by 28 successive masters and much later became the origin of Zen. Seeing beauty in a flower could awaken humans, however briefly, to the beauty that is an essential part of their own innermost being, their true nature. The first recognition of beauty is one of the most significant events in the evolution of human consciousness. The feelings of joy and love are intrinsically connected to that recognition. So I had not read that at the time we began Canyon Blooms, but it very much speaks to what we are attempting to do. So Canyon Blooms Petals for Patients. Thank you. That's what I need, tips. So Canyon Blooms Petals for Patients. More? Did I go too far? Okay, so try 3. We're a small local nonprofit. It actually goes back farther than that. So my name's Kara Lolley. I'm a naturopathic physician and acupuncturist here in Yakima, have been for many years. My training before that was as an herbalist, a botanist, and primarily I do a lot of acupuncture work right now, which is very much based on cycles of nature. In 2020, I had a dear friend with advanced Parkinson's who had been admitted into the Fieldstone facility very shortly before lockdown happened. And when COVID started and they went into lockdown, I would take these big vase arrangements and drop them off at the door for her. And I later discovered through the nurses that she was taking these vases and taking them apart and making 25 little posies that she was delivering up and down her hallway in the facility. When Candace came home to the farm for hospice at the end of her life, I wanted to do something in honor of that spirit. And she had left a little small bequeathment that we used to buy our 2-wheel tractor named Bessie. And Bessie and a very small hoop house, well, small in ours, she's about 12 by 40, but a small hoop house got us started. And I rototilled up a small piece of the goat pasture and started in 2021 is when we actually grew our first flowers. And I was taking these into the office and giving them to patients who were facing anxiety and fear primarily. And then we started donating some to the women's shelter who was near my office, and Cottage in the Meadow, and it kind of grew from that. So last year, in July, we became a 501c3 nonprofit. And at that time, we were donating about 60 vases a week. And we would fund this by selling some of what we grew at the farmer's market and at little music events in town. So now it's May, and it's quite lovely we're doing this on Memorial Day. I hadn't even thought of that. But We're now donating over 100, 110 at least as a minimum every week is going out to donation. And we're providing flowers for 15 different organizations at this time. And what I had initially, or what we had envisioned, and this is largely volunteers that make this happen. What we were focused on was the gifting of the flowers to the patient. But it's become much more than that. When we take the flowers in these crates of vases, and I'm sorry, I just dashed here from the farmer's market, and I meant to bring some flowers so you could see the beauty, and I wish I'd put a PowerPoint together so you could kind of conceptually see what I'm talking about. But when we deliver these crates of vases, they are always taken to the medical team at the facilities we're paired with. And then those medical providers have the delight in distributing those to the patients they know who would value from them most. And I get as many cards now from nursing staff and even a cardiologist who have said how useful it is in building what we medically call rapport, which is relationship, right? The flowers provide a tool where they can bring something that's mutually enjoyable. That helps them in building relationship that is much more, I think, ultimately important than the medical care itself, right? So that's been a really cool thing. Another layer that I didn't anticipate is when we sell flowers at events, we're often now overhearing all these little conversations happening at tables and picnic blankets about end-of-life care. And it's something as a community I don't think we talk enough about the challenges of caring for elders and friends and the resources, sharing with each other the resources that are out there. So that's been lovely. And then this year, there's a whole nother level that's happening, and that's the volunteers that are showing up at the farm. And we kind of accumulate folks that are dealing with pain and suffering, right? I mean, if I think about the employees on the farm, Harry's there. He lost a brother in an irrigation ditch when he was trying to save a dog. And Wendy, her husband, I mean, she's in her 50s now, but, well, I guess she's in her 60s now. She lost her husband from an unexpected heart attack at 27, leaving her with 2 very small kids, right? Everybody that's there on the farm understands the mission of what we're trying to do. So when people experience fear or anxiety, there's a contraction. You know, we go downward, we go inward, which is the nature of pain and suffering. What the flowers do in a way is remind us that there's also this incredible connection to life. And it's a really beautiful thing. So I meant to read this earlier, but before we became, this is kind of what tipped us into becoming a 501c3, was a note that I received that says, I just wanted to say thank you. The first day I arrived at the women's shelter after leaving my abuser was the hardest day of my life. I was wondering if what I was doing was the right thing for me and my little girls. The next day I woke up to flowers outside our small room. I realized I could do this, and I was not alone. You may not realize it, but you give us hope by sending us flowers. Thank you. I use that on, I'll leave some of these. We're a 501c3, so we did our first fundraising drive, but these letters tell more about our program, and I'll leave some in the back. So we've now expanded. We're working with about 15 different organizations. We're really focused on end-of-life care and on trauma. That's where our focus is. So we now are working this year brand new with Meals on Wheels and the Sela Yakima Community Network folks, because they know who are the housebound elders, right? And again, in those cases, it goes to the drivers, because the drivers are the ones that know who is really struggling. And not everybody enjoys flowers, right? They're not universal. But there's an awful lot of people who do. And the medical staff, they kind of know who those people are, and that's who we're targeting. I can't grow enough flowers on my acre for everybody in Yakima who needs flowers. though we really try hard. Most of the goat pasture has now been converted to flowers. I'm down to 2 dairy goats who are on like a postage stamp. And we have a full acre that is now in flower production, pretty high intensity flower production. So I don't know what else would be really useful to share, but my goal, if I look forward in where we're trying to go, is so right now I sell about 50%, or I should say the events team, they sell about 50% of what we grow to buy the supplies for the donation program. That's how we fund this. I'm hoping that we can start to put more and more of what we grow directly into the donation program. We're also encouraging more backyard growers, you know, the dahlia fanatics and the zinnia experts, to also bring flowers that they might like to contribute to this program. I mean, we have a few that are already doing that, and that's really lovely, right? They show up with their buckets of snapdragons and tuck them into the cooler, and those get incorporated. The Yakima Poets Society, it was Poets Month, I think, in April, and the local poets all wrote poems that we attached to the donation vases. That was lovely. Every year between Christmas and New Year's, I do a vision board thing, which is my own practice, but the old ones are hanging in the staff bathroom down in the barn. And one of the volunteers has taken all these little quotes off these and now turned them into these also beautiful little artistic pieces that are getting attached to the vases. So it's really fun to see how different individuals are putting their own creativity and love into this project. It is very much an act of love. Paul Tillich once said, the first duty of love is to listen. And I think the flowers in some way open us to that moment of awe, right? You smell it or you see something that is just, it's breathtaking. And in that moment, there's an internal quietness. That's the listening part. The psychologists right now are referring to it as awe. When we experience awe, whether it's a sunset or whatever it might be, it stimulates the vagus nerve, which some researchers call the soul nerve, because it's through the vagus nerve that we experience a connection to something bigger than ourselves. Flowers do that. They're a tool to do that. At end of life, when people are often experiencing a lot of anxiety, family members are experiencing anxiety, it's a lovely little kind of awareness of something much bigger than ourselves. So I think it's Mother Teresa who said, we can do no great things. We do only small things with great love. In some ways, these flowers, which are so perishable, I mean, you thought cherries were perishable. Try flowers, right? They're this precious, ephemeral, little, tiny window in time. But that's all it takes. We just need to experience that awe for these tiny little moments to help open our heart. So I have one other little reading I wanted to do, and then I'll be done. But this is called Love and Beauty. It says, there's great suffering in the world. Our society is suffering. The planet is suffering. Families are suffering. And this is in addition to the personal suffering in our own lives. It's important for us to be aware of this suffering and not turn away from it. But it's truly important to ground ourselves in the love and beauty of the world. Love and beauty are also real. They provide light in response to the darkness. It's easy to see darkness from a distance, but we often have to look up close to see life and beauty. When we make love and beauty the foundation of our lives, it nourishes our spirit and helps us cope with the suffering we encounter. When we are sucked into the great sadness of the world, we become part of that sadness. So how do we resist all the sadness around us? We resist it by grounding our lives in the love and beauty of the world. It was written by Greg Kretsch, who has a little Japanese kind of nonprofit back east called the To Do Institute. There's a lot of good stuff there. Yes?
So I'm curious, when you knew that flowers, I mean, you were a botanist, when did the beauty of them really?
Well, I think I've been interested in the beauty of plants most of my life. I mean, my mother was one of the first women in the Seattle Mountaineers. I don't know that she appreciates flowers the same way I do, but she certainly does mountaintops, right? Like, she has a lot of first ascents on mountains in Washington. But I spent a lot of time outdoors growing up, and I love beauty. I love how beauty is something that changes something inside of me, right? It's very easy for me to get anxious and wound up, and there's so much to do, and I have a busy clinical practice and now a very busy farm, and but when we stop and we smell a sweet pea, or we watch a peony open, it changes something in me, right? There's an opening that happens. I love to share that. I love to share that with people. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for hearing about us. The farm is located up Cowiche Canyon Road, not very far from Fred Meyer. It is open for open farm times on Friday and Saturday and Monday mornings when I'm there from 10 to 2. If you ever want to stop by and get a tour, we'd love to show people what we're doing. Canyon Blooms Petals for Patients. It's a long-winded name. It kind of came about by accident, but that's what it is. Any other questions? Yes?
The flowers that are for sale at farmers market, is that in Yakima?
Yes, so I'm going to be dashing back there now. I left a volunteer in charge of the booth. Yes, well, I'm a volunteer too, so I guess we're all volunteers. Yes, so we're at the Sunday Yakima Farmers Market, the one that's downtown, and in June 26th we'll be moving to the new Rotary Pavilion, which is where track 29 used to be. We're all very excited about that. And then you'll see us wherever there's good music in town. We try to show up, and the bands have been very gracious about letting us share what we do at break time. And so, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.